For the benefit of those who don't know you, briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is PaulineJo Adia. I am an LMSW, which is a licensed master social worker here in Maryland, where our company was founded. And I do individual therapy with teenagers and adults. And I have been with the company for over 2 years now.
So, can you give a brief overview of the projects we are undertaking in the Philippines?
Most definitely. So, we actually have two projects going on in which I was chosen to be the representative. Interestingly, my parents are actually from the Philippines, so I know my way around for the most part. I'll be kind of traveling around the main city there, which is called Manila. So, the first and biggest project is I'll be able to meet our admin staff. The majority of our admin staff actually is in Manila, or my apologies, they're in uh, the surrounding areas of Manila. And we'll be doing a 1 day conference, getting to see each other face to face, as that's a very invaluable experience, right? Even though we talk all the time. But we are going to be doing some kind of in person trainings. We'll be able to kind of get to understand each other's perspective, right? I really have this belief that teams work better when you can understand what other people are doing, right? You can build empathy, compassion, and you can ultimately kind of bounce more ideas off of each other. And then we'll be doing a lot of kind of mental health discussions, right? So I know again that Carrie Ann and Frank do a great job already training the Philippine staff so well. But we'll also be focusing on discussing maybe some of the issues that, in particular, the Filipino community experiences as well as Asian community experiences. Interestingly, here in the US, where we serve the majority of our clients, even just the Filipino community, they're of the top 5 or top 10 minorities, meaning there's a good amount of need, right? And so I really want to bring out one of Frank's values, which is he really values being giving and ultimately helping people and ultimately making mental health accessible in really everywhere, right? There are actually so many places in the world in which mental health education is not quite accessible, or really it's not quite even accepted, right? So the idea is the more we talk about it, and again, with our Filipino team being a huge, amazing asset to our team that we are grateful for, right? The more we educate people, the more they can educate other people, right? And so it's sort of this gift that I'm able to have this once in a life opportunity again to train the staff, be in the Philippines. And then the second smaller project that I'm doing is essentially I'm working with the main social work group of the Philippines. So it's sort of like saying here it's called the NASW, National Association for Social Workers. So I'll be actually speaking for a conference that they have. So this is different in that these social workers are actually connected with governments and hospitals and schools. And actually, in the Philippines, mental health was only discussed, or it was only announced as an actual health issue only in about 2017. So you can imagine, right? If in the US we have had known about mental health since the early 1900s, right? And then you got the Philippines, that's a more developing country, and only found out about it like 6 years ago, right? There's a lot of work to do. So again, and I'll think of the name eventually, but the NASW version in the Philippines is really excited to have me in as well. Frank knows that I'll be representing Lartey Wellness as just in these 2 years. though it's been a very, very busy 2 years, right? I have learned so much, and I'm enthusiastic to want to bring all of that education to the Philippines.
That's quite a great initiative. I mean, yeah, I relate to the part where mental health is not really a big issue in developing countries, even in Africa, Ghana, Nigeria. It's not really a thing. People are actually more concerned about what they're gonna eat, where they're gonna sleep, and mental health is just an afterthought. So yeah, I think that's a great initiative, trying to connect with places where mental health is not really an issue and actually amplifying the need for mental health services. So I actually applaud the idea. So when is this going to take place? Both initiatives.
Yeah, so the first initiative with the group outside of Lartey is going to occur in September 13th. The group is trying to figure out the location, but they typically have like a one time a year conference that all social workers are required to go to. So that will happen then, and then on the 15th through the 16th, we'll be holding the conference for the Lartey staff. So again, not only will it be this very informative conference, right? I also want to make it fun for my staff members, right? We're also about having lighthearted, professional fun at Lartey, right? You know, Frank is mostly business, right? But we also want to show that we have like a personal side. And so we have been fortunate that we are hoteling our staff so that we can really, again, have that bonding experience, as well as so we can spend as much time as we can to kind of talk and have these conversations.
Sure, sure. Okay, so is this the first time we are going to the Philippines for something like that? Bonding out with our staff. Is this the first time we're doing that?
So, to my knowledge, aside from Lartey going to Ghana as well as Canada, the Philippines is the third country.
Okay.
I think we might have been to Puerto Rico, but don't quote me on that.
Sure,
But this is our third country, which is really exciting.
sure. And I think Jamaica is also in the works. I think Korean is also going to Jamaica to meet some interns over there and actually connect with the people in Jamaica too. So I think that's going to be our fourth, depending on who goes first. You're going to be the third or the fourth.
Oh, nice. Good.
Yeah, yeah. I actually had an interview with Korean during the week, so that's also up on YouTube. You can watch it later. What would we what do we want to see in order to call this project a success?
Great question. So I think it helps not only to have everyone I speak with walk away with new knowledge, right? But I also want to be able to provide the people that attend with a certificate, right? Now I still have to kind of work out the kind of details with Frank about what that certificate looks like, whether it's just a certificate of participation with his signature, right? Since he is our leader, right? Or whether it be some type of like letter that all of these individuals can take with them that states that they've participated, right? We want to not only, again, educate the people, but we also want them to feel like they can walk away feeling some type of success, right? So, for example, the reason why I'm meeting with social workers in the Philippines is not only because my mom is a retired social worker and she has a lot of connections, but also because right now in the Philippines, the only people that can conduct mental health treatment is psychologists and psychiatrists. But the problem is, especially after COVID is now over, right? There are so many, especially young people, so affected, right? Going back to school, getting into the workforce, having families, what have you. And so there's actually a huge population of a need, but then these hospitals are overwhelmed, right? And so now the government is trying to like get social workers to also do the work as well, which is quite interesting because it really kind of reminds me of the history even in the US and how social work has come up, right? Where same thing, right? In the very beginning of the early 1900s, or maybe even earlier, it was really only psychologists or psychiatrists doing work. And then later on, they invited counselors, social workers, marriage and license therapists. And so all this to say, without me going off on a tangent, I want everyone to walk away with some type of certification, right? And then that also shows others, right, that our organization, again, is about teaching, and we're not just here and just counseling people, because as much as counseling is very, very, very important, and that's the main thing we do, right, there's also advocacy to people that needs to exist. There also needs to be business. There needs to be organization, right? Going back to what you were, and I apologize that I kind of glossed over it, but what you were saying about in Ghana, right? Same thing, that, you know, there's a gap in services, but those gaps in services can only exist if there's some type of advocacy.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, do we have any long-term goals in these countries that we are going to? Do we look to have a presence in these countries? Do we have any long-term goals for projects like these?
I am embarrassed to say I had not thought about that. However, I think it would be great to have a long-term plan. Again, part of initiatives and having
Yeah.
these task force groups, and ultimately people like myself, right? These volunteers that are going out and doing the startups, right? Um, it's good to envision kind of this long-term goal as you're kind of getting through it. I
Yeah.
think it would be wonderful as a long-term goal that maybe every year or every 2 years there could be either a representative visiting, or there could be kind of like, though I already know that the admin staff has a lot of work to do, right?
Yeah.
Could they also put under their skill set, right, their ability to train others based on what I have trained them on,
Okay.
right? Is there, can they be the group that kind of is kind of that base, right? I firmly believe that Lartey is only going to get bigger from here, right?
Yeah.
And truthfully, right, what's also important about this trip, right, is if we're having a growing number of Filipinos, eventually we're going to need kind of like that core group,
Yeah.
right? Then truthfully, and I've spoken to Frank about this, Frank Lartey, that, you know, I've been here for over 2 years now, right? Though I was not his very first employee at Lartey, right? The agency has changed for the better and grown for the better since my day one, right? So I can't imagine if I'm going to be here for 2 more years, how much bigger we're going to be, what is going to be the need. And the more need we have, the more support we're going to need. And really, ultimately, kind of this like cohesion, right? And so I also know that we have a growing team in Ghana, which is wonderful. And then, as you had mentioned, right, we are growing as well in kind of the Caribbean area.
Yeah.
So Puerto Rico, Jamaica. I think we might have had a couple of staff members. I want to say Barbados. I should know like where everyone is, but that means that we have so many people, right? And then on top of that, sorry, going back to Asia, right? We have so many students from either China, Taiwan, or Singapore through
Yeah.
the Johns Hopkins program, right? So that's another network, right? So we're really growing, and so we need to find some team eventually later down the line when things are more ironed out that is really going to kind of hold it together and help us kind of grow, because that's the only way you can grow.
Yeah. I mean, with our growth comes responsibility too. So having such a team or such a plan is actually going to help our growth and actually help us manage that responsibility well. So you've been in this role for 2 years, and you've seen growth, the growth of the company from its first days to today. Is there any piece of advice you would give for somebody who would want to be in your role, or is there anything you've learned that you'd want to pass on?
I love that question. There is actually not an official quote, of course, but I do go on social media like any normal person. And I follow a lot of therapists. And this one therapist who actually has a private practice in Maryland, we used to be colleagues, I look up to her. She had posted this quote, and it just really was life changing for me. So essentially, it said something along the lines of, as much as we are there for our clients, remember that they are also a part of our lives. Meaning to say, right, every relationship we have in life, every healthy relationship has to be a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
So I think about how I have helped many, many clients, especially in my 2-year mark, graduate from our program feeling confident and successful in their mental health, despite mental health being an ongoing thing in our life, right? That they can walk away with the tools and that they can um, move on to the next chapter and feel like they can adapt, right? And of course, it's very bittersweet because, you know, I would see these clients at a fairly consistent schedule. Of course, it's never perfect, right? But, you know, for example, I would have one client every single Thursday at 6 p.m. for 2 years, right? So that's hypothetically 52 weeks times two, that's about 104 weeks, right? So that's about 104 sessions. And so while it's bittersweet to, you know, say goodbye, it reminds me, right, that I didn't realize how much I grew, not only as a therapist, but as a person,
Mhm.
um, just by having so many opportunities at Lartey, and that I really appreciate that. I think what makes our agency, though I'm biased, of course, because I work here, right? But what I think makes our agency different than other agencies, right, is a lot of social service, mental health, community-based work says, okay, self-care, and, you know, I'm going to help my staff from not burning out, right? I think Frank really, really means it, right? He also means business, of course, and he's always going to emphasize like, well, what about the business? But he really does a great job in helping the interns, his staff, as well as his therapists to remember that we are only as good as our clients. I mean, we are only good for our clients as much as we are good for ourselves, right? So
Yes.
there's constantly these coexisting relationships: the relationship with ourselves, the relationship we have with our clients, the relationship we have with the admin, and so forth. And so there's a lot of professional and personal self-care that he's always emphasizing. So ultimately, if anyone were to work here, right, that's a great consideration. It's kind of an unspoken benefit, but it's important, right? Because it may be a little bit difficult to work in an agency where their belief is like, keep working until you burn out and then just keep working after that, because, you know, we have this like unstable model, right? That's not sustainable in the long
Yeah.
run.
And one thing about Frank is he's not the bureaucracy type. There's very little bureaucracy at Lartey Wellness. You can literally talk to Frank and he responds. If you have an idea, you throw it at him. He actually, oh, go ahead, do this, do that. Like it's the working environment in Lartey is like, I would say the best I've worked with so far. It's one of the best places I've worked so far. And yeah, I would also recommend Lartey any day to with their client or worker. It's really one of the best places. Frank is like one of the best bosses I've had in a very long time. So back to us. So I think out of questions for you. Um if there's nothing else to add, I guess I would wish you luck on the project. I hope we get to learn as much from them as they also get to learn from us. I hope our staff get to feel the, should I say, the presence of Lartey, and also feel that they are part of one big family as well. So I guess that would be at the end of our meeting. If you have any questions from me.
No questions, but just want to thank you again for your hard work, and we're so grateful to have you. And I always like to acknowledge again our front desk staff, as again they're the backbone of our agency. And a special thank you to Carrie Ann, Brianna, and Lee, who have been with the company since essentially day one, and with me since my day one. So.
Right. It's been great again to you, PaulineJo. Thank you very much. Have a nice rest of the day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.